On a quiet morning in Hayward, California, undercover deputies execute a minor deception. They knock on the door of an elderly homeowner, claiming they accidentally backed into his car in the driveway. The target is 74-year-old John Arthur Getru. He steps outside, completely relaxed, and even chuckles as deputies pat him down, telling them it was a good line for coming out of the house. Getru is actually being taken into custody for a murder case that has sat dormant for 45 years. This quiet suburban driveway marks the conclusion of a pursuit that began nearly half a century ago. Back in the early 1970s, the Stanford University community was on edge. Two 21-year-old women, Leslie Perlov and Janet Taylor, were found strangled in the Stanford Dish hiking area, their bodies left dumped in the brush. Investigators pursued every lead, but they ran into a wall. The crime scenes yielded a complete vacuum of physical evidence usable by 1970 standards, causing the trail to go entirely cold. Taking advantage of that missing evidence, the killer seamlessly blended into California's suburban society. He became a trusted family man, a devoted husband, and a leader for the local Boy Scout Explorer post. He also successfully buried his past. Years earlier, while living on a U.S. military base in West Germany as a teenager, Getru had been convicted of strangling a 15-year-old girl, serving just 6 years before returning to the States. In an era before modern forensics, leaving the state and maintaining a quiet, respectable facade was enough to make 2 more murders vanish entirely. The case sat untouched until modern cold case investigators reopened the files. They found trace biological evidence meticulously preserved, DNA scraped from beneath Leslie's fingernails and extracted from Janet's clothing. This animated diagram illustrates genetic genealogy, bypassing the need for a suspect's DNA in police databases. Uploading crime scene DNA to public databases helps investigators locate distant relatives. They build the outer branches of a family tree and trace those lines backward toward a common ancestor. By mapping marriages, births, and census records, converging lines eventually point to one specific individual. An anonymous genetic sequence becomes a concrete name, John Getru. At that moment, the pool of billions of potential suspects collapses. The genetic web rapidly narrows down to a single point, identifying Getru. Investigators used Getru's own distant relatives to build a bridge across a 45-year gap, achieving what traditional police work of the 1970s could not. Inside the 2018 interrogation room, the lead detective sits across from Getru. He doesn't need a confession. He is already armed with absolute biological proof matching Getru to Leslie Perlov. Getru tries to bluff his way through, relying on an outdated understanding of trace DNA. He confidently tells the detective that DNA only transfers through semen or saliva, completely unaware of how easily modern science detects microscopic skin cells. The detective recognizes this overconfidence and deliberately lets Getru steer the conversation, offering vague prompts to see how far the suspect will trip over his own arrogance. Then comes the fatal error. Before the detective ever brings up the second victim, Getru volunteers details about 2 girls and 2 hills, explicitly connecting himself to both crime scenes. Genetic genealogy placed him in that chair, but his total ignorance of modern science and his inability to keep quiet sealed his fate. Getru's defense immediately collapsed. He was convicted of both murders, received 2 consecutive life sentences, and died in prison in 2023 at the age of 79. The 45 years Getru spent living as a free man ended once the forensic evidence was finally processed by modern labs. The biological material collected in 1973 remained physically intact, holding information that could only be accessed once DNA sequencing became standard. Today, Getru's DNA remains in the state database, actively scanned against other unsolved cases. It proves that no matter how long a criminal hides, they cannot outlast their own biology.